I am here with Rachel Thornton, the Chief Marketing Officer of Adobe Enterprise. Thank you so much for having us, Rachel. Rachel, we appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Akash.
So before we get into the strategy of Adobe Enterprise, just tell us about this event. I mean, why is this event so important to Adobe?
This is the biggest event for the creative community. It is the preeminent event for the creative community. There are 10,000 people here with us today learning about all things Adobe and creativity and AI.
So I want to dive into each of those topics because there's so much there. You know, you have an interesting role as Chief Marketing Officer because you spend your time at Adobe effectively talking to a lot of other
Marketers.
Chief
Yes.
Marketing Officers. Yes. And so that gives you like this very ultimate point of view on what Chief Marketing Officers are thinking about worldwide. So what is on the minds right now of CMOs? Tell us.
I think the big areas that, CMOs are talking about or wanting to dive deep on and get ahead of are disruptions in areas like SEO to LLMs. So how people are, increasingly searching for information on LLMs, things like ChatGPT, things like Perplexity. I think there's this amazing promise of personalization at scale. And in fact, now more than ever, it's a reality, but it means you have to have so much more content so you can really bring personalized experience to life. So CMOs thinking about how much content do they need? How do they scale that content? And then I think also as interfaces change and you get much more conversational AI, like what does that mean for their experiences and how they deliver those experiences to customers?
What about CMOs getting access to the tools that they want? Because one of the things that we talk about on our show is how expensive AI is, and paying for this software is expensive. And Chief Marketing Officers, I have to imagine they're like, look, we want to spend, and is there a part of it that is like, it's never been more expensive to spend on some of these tools? How does that work for them?
I think it's actually, there's a lot of interest in AI. There's been obviously a lot of experimentation with AI. Like a lot of the CMOs I talk with, they've done a lot of experiments. Now they're looking to understand how they can scale it. And I think doing that effectively, in order to make sure that the investments you're making in AI are really going to deliver the ROI you're looking for, it comes down to, do you have a really strong data foundation? More and more when I talk to CMOs, they now look at their really close collaborator in the enterprise, their CIO. Like how do they work with the CIO to understand what's the data we have on customers? How can we build a solid data foundation to make sure that all of the investments we make in AI, as we scale AI solutions, they pay off because they have and they're built on that strong data foundation. So that collaboration has really become top of mind for CMOs.
And then I imagine that the CFO also gets involved in any conversation that the CMO is having with the CIO. So, okay, so you talked about SEOs, as the SEO game changing. Into LLMs, and I'm sure there are other three-letter acronyms that we should be talking about. But talk to me about how Adobe is addressing that issue and the issues that you described, because these are big questions that customers are facing.
They absolutely are. And I think what's great about the work we're doing at Adobe is we have such great conversations with CMOs, but to your point, we're also kind of our own test bed. So we use, like my team, we use all of our own products. We call it Adobe on Adobe, where we're always looking at when CMOs say, hey, help me navigate this SEO to LLM optimizer conversation. We're like, great. And hearing that feedback has helped us with products. So for example, we recently went GA with Adobe's LLM Optimizer, which is a product solely designed to help marketers make that shift, to help them understand how they can show up better when someone's searching in an LLM for their service or their product.
And so Optimizer is basically, we hear of these tools time and time again. It's where you can sort of use these marketing tools to show up better.
Show up better.
In these chatbot results.
Exactly.
Do you think about, the startups that are playing in that space? I mean, this is a very competitive space. I mean, how do you think about competition in a feature like that, for example?
I think when you're really close to your customers and when like Adobe has an amazing customer breadth. And, I'm sure if you walk around here today, you're going to see some amazing customers. If you watch the keynote that happened, it's just amazing customers that are with us. So, folks like Coca-Cola, Newell Brands is here, Estee Lauder, all of these amazing companies. And so as we work with them, we're really able to understand, what are they seeing? What do they want to do for their customers? How do they want to provide great customer experience? But also that rich data of, we've helped build their MarTech infrastructure. So we're really in a great position to help them leverage kind of all of the investment and the understanding they have in partnership with us to really help them show up like an LLMs. And I think that is a powerful competitive advantage.
So that's the competitive advantage against the startups. What about the ad tech for as dynamic a space as ad tech and advertising is? We've written stories at The Information about Salesforce, about Amazon, about Microsoft. I mean, big tech companies are charging full steam ahead into the space. How do you think about competition there against those big giants?
What is amazing about Adobe, and the reason why, I love the company, I love the job, I love all the innovation, is that Adobe uniquely can bring together creativity, marketing, and AI. No one else can do that. I mean, just look around here and see all of the innovation that's happening in the creative space. But then that intersection with bringing that creativity to life, personalizing it and scaling it for your customers and using AI to just be able to move faster, to innovate faster, that's powerful. And there's no other company that can do that.
It's funny, when I have thought about Adobe, and I think a lot of other people too, we don't think too much about marketing software right off the bat. We think more of the creative tools. And we're going to have conversations later today with your colleagues about Gen Studio and about the Foundry offerings that the company is coming to life with. But is this part of a broader shift for Adobe diving deeper into MarTech, marketing software? Can we expect the enterprise segment of the business to really be the future of the company?
I think if you look at, Adobe's history in this space, it's a pretty strong history. If you think about Adobe Analytics, if you think about email, Marketo, if you think about Campaign Optimizer, so much of what marketers do when they look at data, when they analyze what their customers are doing, and then they build campaigns around them, so much of it is built on Adobe's foundation. So I think that telling that story and being loud and proud with that story is the great opportunity. And I think the way that I think about, hey, how do we talk about creativity? We do a very similar event to this in April in Las Vegas.
Where is that?
Adobe Summit.
Okay.
So I definitely think Adobe has a strong and a rich history here. And now just how do we make sure that we're bringing it to life and we're telling that story and we're loud and proud about it.
And so with that enterprise story, talk to me about how that shows up in the financial results, because people might look at the results, they might say, okay, I sort of think of the digital experience segment as the enterprise segment. That's not growing as fast as the digital media segment, which is sort of what we think about as the consumer segment. So how does that come through in the financial results then?
I think the thing that's been really exciting is when we look at our AI first products. So like when you think about Gen Studio, this has been a huge growth driver, 25% year-on-year growth, because it's really speaking to the needs of marketers. So I mentioned the need for content and personalization at scale. So more and more marketers are thinking about how are they building the right content supply chain to really make personalization at scale a reality for their business. And it comes down to how are they using Adobe Gen Studio. And that's the great growth we've seen.
We had Vinod Khosla on the show last week. And one of the things that he mentioned was, I asked him the question, what is the hurdle right now to enterprises really embracing AI? And he made the comment that they don't have the right people on the ground to work with the tools right now. And I was struck by those comments because more and more we see companies that are sending their people into enterprises and saying, hey, look, you might not have the right talent. Take our people. And that's kind of what you're doing today with Foundry. Do you see that happen? Do you see enterprises sort of struggling with, hey, the software isn't enough? We don't have the right talent. Is that something you're seeing with the customers that you work with?
I think that it's, for a lot of companies, looking not just at your talent, but really looking at where can you encourage as a leader, like how you encourage experimentation with AI? How are you getting people AI literate? How are you really encouraging people to learn more, to embrace it? I think a lot of the conversations that I've been having with CMOs around reskilling or upskilling, I think would be a better term. Like for a lot of CMOs, they're looking at their teams and they're like, okay, how do we help people learn more, apply their skills, take AI into their jobs and not feel like, I don't know how to use this, so I don't know what to do. It's interesting what it said, but I still do think there's a huge opportunity for people just to get comfortable with experimentation
themselves.
Yes, get excited about learning and, get skilled and get trained on this. I think that is a huge opportunity.
I want to ask you this because you're a marketer, and so much of marketing is messaging. And, so much has been said about AI, and yet I still think there are probably some misconceptions about how to work with AI, what AI can do. What do you think the biggest misconception is around AI right now with respect to how enterprises can or should be using it?
I think it's the thinking about replacement, thinking of it as replacement rather than augmentation. And I think of it as amplification and augmentation, right? I think that when I watch my teams and we're working through a problem and we are thinking about, okay, how are we doing our research? How are we figuring this out? But also, how are we then using it to scale our creativity or scale our campaigns? Like, I think that's powerful. Like, if I think about the agents that we have, like, for a good example, like, what's our site optimization agent that we use? And we use that all the time. Our audience agents, like, how can we just be better, move faster, and kind of amplify the impact of the team? That's what I think is powerful about AI.
Great. Well, Rachel, thank you for having us. We appreciate it. And we'll see more of you
This was
later
great.
on.